What's good, YouTube? In this video we'll be taking a look at whether or not you should upgrade to the iPhone 15 from the iPhone 14. We'll be going over a lot of the features of both series of phones and how the iPhone 15 might be different in terms of specs and the experience. If you like this kind of content or find this kind of content helpful, leave a message down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching. So the iPhone 15 has been recently re-released, and it has a bunch of upgrades from the iPhone 14, and also in many ways it's very similar to the iPhone 14. We'll be going over some specific upgrades and differences between the two models here if you're thinking of changing from the iPhone 14 to the iPhone 15. The decision to upgrade from one model to another is a pretty big one, as you'll have to weigh the pros and cons on whether or not you want to pay the premium for some of these upgrades on the iPhone 15. So let's just get right into it. First up, we'll just take a look at the looks and the form factor. Overall, both the phones look pretty much the same, as the form factor of the iPhone 15 is very similar to the iPhone 14, save for the titanium on the iPhone 15 Pro Max models. You still have the dynamic island at the top of the screen, and the screen size and ratios are comparable to the iPhone 14 as well. Speaking of the screen, however, there is a difference between the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 14, as overall the iPhone 15 is brighter, with the iPhone 14 coming in at 800 nits of max brightness and the iPhone 15 coming in at around 100 nits of brightness. This can make a difference with whether or not you want to have the brightest kind of screen available for iOS. So if that's something that you're looking for, then it might be worth considering in terms of upgrading to the iPhone 15. Having extra brightness can come in handy, especially if you're using the phone in direct sunlight, as it allows a lot more readability and visibility to have a little bit of extra brightness on your screen. So if you find yourself having a hard time reading what's on your iPhone 14, or if you use your phone outside a lot, you might consider upgrading just for the increased brightness on this phone. Next, we'll move on to one of the major differences with the iPhone 15, and that of course is the USB-C. The iPhone 15 is the first phone that has in Apple's lineup that isn't using the Lightning connector and is using USB-C. So this can be a very big deal, particularly if you are already well invested in Apple's ecosystem of Lightning products. So if you have an iPhone 14 and have a lot of dongles or adapters that have made Lightning usable for you, then you might want to hold off for a bit here for a few more generations, just so that you can maximize your return on your adapters and accessories that you have for the Lightning connector. Of course, you could always buy the appropriate dongle and connector for the Lightning to USB, but if you already have the iPhone 14, in my opinion, it might not be worth switching just quite yet to USB-C if you're already heavily invested in the ecosystem. In terms of charging, both the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 15 both support wireless charging, and of course it depends on your preference whether or not you prefer to charge via USB-C or via Lightning. Next, we have the actual processor on each of these phones. The iPhone 14 has Apple's A15 Bionic chip, whereas the iPhone 15 has Apple's A16 Bionic chip, which is a significant upgrade in terms of the performance. However, that being said, the iPhone 15, the A15 Bionic chip in the iPhone 14 is no slouch. So if you're just using the phone for everyday things like browsing the web and making calls and watching videos, then you might still want to hold off for a few generations with your iPhone 14, as the iPhone 14's A15 Bionic chip still has excellent performance in today's phone marketplace. Next up, of course, is the camera, and one of the biggest upgrades with the iPhone 15 is the 48 megapixel sensor in the iPhone 15, which is a pretty significant increase from the 12 megapixel standard with the iPhone 14 series of phones. There's a bunch of other camera upgrades as well, but this is probably the most significant on the spec sheet, is the upgrade in megapixels to the iPhone 15. So if you find yourself taking pictures with your phone a lot and you want to maximize quality that you can get on your smartphone, this might be a deal breaker for you, and it might be worth upgrading if you're using the phone for a lot of photography. There's other camera upgrades, such as upgrades to the portrait and improved night mode on both the front-facing and rear camera. So these can factor into your decision on whether or not you want to upgrade to the iPhone 15 just for the camera alone. And finally, we have the price. With the release of the iPhone 15, there have been decreases in the price of the iPhone 14 depending on which market you reside in, and this can be pretty significant. The iPhone 15 doesn't really change too many things for me in terms of the overall smartphone experience. So if you've just received your iPhone 14 in the last year or even more recently, then I think the added cost of upgrading to the iPhone 15 isn't really worth it unless you're doing it for the camera and the added performance of the different processor. So overall, if you have the iPhone 14, it should be more than enough for most smartphone applications for the time being, but some things like the upgraded screen, processor, and camera on the iPhone 15 do make it a very enticing upgrade if you're using your phone for photography or any other things that are particularly demanding on the processor. So there you have it, everyone. Just a quick breakdown of what I think are some of the major differences between the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 14 and whether or not you should upgrade. Leave a message down below if you think there's any other deal breakers with the iPhone 15 that is worth the added cost. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe. Leave a message down below, and thanks for watching.